Here we are for another round of the 70s versus the 90s. And here in the 11th round is one of the hardest that I've ever had to do. And it's quite the shoot 'em up round, too. We have Sam Peckinpah's The Wild Bunch versus George P. Cosmatos' Tombstone. And like I said, this one was the hardest one I've had to do yet. And because, you know, the Western, obviously one of my favorite genres, and the thing about westerns is it's a true like fucking American genre. There's only three of them: westerns, gangster films, and musicals. But the western, and of course, L.A., Hollywood, that's all out west. That's where the West settled. And when the dust finally settled, they just kicked more up and made fucking westerns and shit. But until Sam Peckinpah came along with the Wild Bunch, the western had very only for very few times been like kind of rooted in reality as opposed to the fantasy makeup land that we had. So to kind of think about the western at this time was in 1969, that John Wayne was on his last leg, the year that he won the Academy Award for True Grit. And also you had Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, but the Wild Bunch stands as something just unique and groundbreaking, and in my opinion, a perfect movie. And you know what, it may not even be my opinion, it could be fucking fact, because it's a film that can't, yet again, like most of the great classics of the 70s, the right place, right time, everybody came together to create beautiful fucking art. And what's crazy about the Wild Bunch is this is one of the rare times where you had like actual men making movies, but that were also kind of sensitive, like artists and shit. And Sam Peckinpah was definitely the cataclysm of fucking where the damn real rugged guy meets the sensitive artist and shit. And like and one of his favorite places to be was Mexico. And he was basically the John Ford of Mexico. And they went and he one of the only gringos to be able to buy land in Mexico too. And so he would go shoot in the most primitive parts of Mexico and get some of the most like great art from it. And the Wild Bunch is just everything that he ever wanted to be. And this is essentially his first movie, technically his third, but the first real, what you can consider a Sam Peckinpah movie, and right out of the jump, the slowest part of this movie are the fucking opening credits, which the amazing score by Jerry Fielding, just very ominous. These guys march into town to hold up this fucking railroad payroll and shit. And the opening shootout is one of the most intense. And so you want to talk about, like, for as many times as you've seen motherfuckers get shot in westerns, you never really saw those motherfuckers die. Like, you see motherfucking blood just shoot out. You see people women and children getting trampled in the confusion. And what's even crazier, you have this opening shootout during a fucking temperance march. And which is even crazier because Sam Peckinpah was a well-known alcoholic. So just the fucking poetry of that, where you see these fucking temperance, singing, we go gather at the river and shit getting mowed down by fucking railroad people in the crossfire of the fucking bad guys. And what's beautiful about the Wild Bunch, the performances are strong. You got William Holden, who's basically playing Sam Peckinpah. As Pike Bishop, he's got the fucking mustache like Peckinpah did. He is playing that because that's Waylon Green, who co-wrote the script with Sam Peckinpah, basically laid down a foundation that was, started loosely created by Roy M. Sickner, who was an associate producer on this one. But it's so, like, just he put so much of himself into that character, and then you had like everybody else too. Ernest Borgnine is insane. That guy, like, probably the nicest guy in the world, but he's a fucking psycho too. Like, he's the one that's always down, the one person that doesn't go in the whorehouse. He's outside whittling some fucking wood. He's ready to kill motherfuckers as they're marching. He's smiling. This dude's fucking crazy. And then you got Ben Johnson and Warren Oates as the Gorch brothers, which is fucking brilliant. Warren Oates hams it up perfectly. Ben Johnson, he was just kind of an asshole and he was always good at that shit. And then Edmund O'Brien is like, but then Robert Ryan might give the best performance as Deke Thornton. This is one of the most tragic fucking performances. A guy that has to sell out his friend, because he's got no other choice. And it's just that dynamic, this is a movie about men, made by and for men, and then the fucking, there's three magnificent action sequences. That opening shootout, that fucking midway train robbery scene, and then the fucking final shootout. I mean, these guys take on like a whole Mexican army. I mean, like these guys don't fuck around. Like, I mean, and honestly, if they hadn't killed the German, they might could have got away with it. But that moment was like William Holden looks at that German, like fuck it, God, it's just perfect fucking movie. I got no complaint. I mean, the cinematography by fucking Lucien Ballard is just on fucking point. The editing, those POV shots, it's like Peckinpah was a guy like that motherfucker knew everything that needed to go in there. This motherfucker was a genius. It's so just the fucking movie is poetry. Like nothing has ever looked better than this. And then that's why like in the dialogue, just, you side with a man, you stay with him. You can't do that. You're like some animal. You're finished. Just fucking brilliant. The list goes on and on. But then you got Tombstone. We'll flash forward to Tombstone. And what's crazy about this is another type of Western, very grit oriented, doesn't quite put you in the dust that Sam Peckinpah does. But for as many times as they have done the wider story in cinema, they never did it again after Tombstone. The same year Kevin Costner came out with his bullshit Wide Earp, but nobody fucking even acknowledges that shit, unless it like ends up coming up on YouTube movies for free or some shit. Nobody fucking cares. But Tombstone, as I record this video, that movie is probably on somewhere. And the performances in Tombstone might be better than The Wild Bunch. Because Kurt Russell, the John Wayne of the 80s, nobody can fucking top his Wide Earp, the look, just the bad. And Val Kilmer, who we recently lost, rest in peace, as Doc Holliday might be his best performance. It's the whole, yet again, talk about quotable lines. I'm your Huckleberry. That's just my game. No day, you'll no daisy, you'll no day, that kind of shit. As I've seen Mr. Ringo here as an educated man. Now I really hate him. Just that kind of shit. Just so fucking brilliant. It's memorable, and all the side characters, yet again, talk about great cinematography. One of the finest cinematographers of all time, William A. Fraker. That's why it looks real beautiful, but it's still kind of, for as much as it kind of sticks with the facts as opposed to the legend. It goes all the way back to that John Ford line in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, when this is the West, when the myth becomes legend, or when the legend becomes truth, print the legend or some shit, that's kind of what goes on here. But it's done in a way where, like, can you really trust John Ford, who did it, who actually knew Wide Earp, because they're both, probably on some bullshit. Because the thing about it is with Tombstone is it's really a series of moments, and goddamn, it's got some great fucking moments. It's all perfectly cast too. You got a lot of scores of great Western character actors, like Powers Booth and then Harry Carey Jr. and shit like that. But like, what sets the Wild Bunch so far ahead of Tombstone is it doesn't, and I've noticed this beginning to become a pattern with most movies in the 90s, is they rely too heavily on the gimmicks. And when you see it stacked up against a movie that didn't have to use any gimmicks and just fucking just does it perfectly, raw, unfiltered, much like Girl Interrupted, where it's like, every chance Tombstone had to really be raw and unfettered, it doesn't have it. And the action scenes are kind of lackluster. Like, honestly, the dramatic fucking renderings, the lines are more intense than the fucking action sequences, which is kind of ironic because, this is like another one of those guys movies, but it's more or less, they motherfuckers just want to be Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday. They don't want to really see the consequences. That's why as much as it pains me, I really wanted to make this one a draw because I love both of these movies. They both have a place in where I grew up and just, people that I knew. But The Wild Bunch is a perfect movie. That ending, that life is more like Deke Thornton sitting outside at the end of that fucking battle. It's like, and Sykes going that great line, it ain't like it used to be, but it'll do. I agree with that first half, don't always agree with that second half. But instead, but with Tombstone, and you go, well, that's the history, that's how it worked out, yada, 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 whatever. But, the whole romance thing kind of bogs it down, even if it's dealt with in such a way that I can, stomach the romance and shit. It's like I said, I had to really, really nitpick on it. But at the end of the day, Tombstone is pure Hollywood. The Wild Bunch, when we talk about anti-Hollywood, this is a clear-cut example of anti-Hollywood because, like, How many times before the Wild Bunch and even after the Wild Bunch you see a movie, an American Western that takes place in Mexico, and like how many actual Mexicans you see in that movie? The Mexicans outweigh the fucking gringos in this movie. And it's done so, I mean, the great Emilio Fernandez, you know, it's just, Peckinpah has a mastery that George P. Cosmatos doesn't have either. You know, it's definitely a film that's strung together by its second unit. And so, as much as it pains me, I got to give this one to the 70s. It's the Wild Bunch. So, for y'all keeping score, it's 7-4 70s. And, you know, like I said, this one was a real tough one. So, and I'm sweating, and I still don't even fully know if I agree with it, but I do. I don't give a fuck. If I've said anything wrong, something you don't agree with, feel free to eviscerate me in the comments. I really don't care. This is a personal journey for me, you know, to find which decade was better, the 70s or the 90s. And so, you know, the 90s were full of gimmicks. The 70s, they didn't need gimmicks because they had true artistry and they weren't fucking out. Like I said, it comes down to the action and the lack, because also with Tombstone, anytime they ran into a narrative problem, they just used some recycled Peckinpah shit, you know. And that's, you know, even that fucking walk they do, like, why is the fucking house, there's a random ass house burning, there's like, oh the house burning, you know, that it's like I said, I'm nitpicking, but that walk in Tombstone wasn't near as badass as that walk in the Wild Bunch. And there's not hardly anything said, you know. Now I'll give it, you know, this is moments, you know. But the thing about it is, the Wild Bunch did it better. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. As a matter of fact, you know what? This is an issue that, like, I'll fucking debate motherfuckers on this shit. We'll go toe to toe with this shit. But, you know, it's in a way, it's where, like, the Wild Bunch paved the way for motherfuckers to get back to the old school ways. You know, they to tear down the institution to become the institution type thing. But there never was and never will be another Sam Peckinpah, and there never will be anything greater than the Wild Bunch, because motherfuckers that know Westerns is either the Wild Bunch or Tombstone. And anybody that says either one of those movies was shit is full of shit, mind you. I'm not saying Tombstone's a bad movie. I'm just saying it was damn near a perfect movie. Wild Bunch is a perfect movie. No fucking complaints on any of it. So, rest in peace, Val Kilmer. And also, you know, passed away years ago. Bill Paxton's also gone to Powers Booth. Like, a lot of these motherfuckers are gone. I don't even think any of the Wild Bunch is still alive, you know. So, the Western it may be dead, but with these two movies, it'll always be alive in our hearts. So, 7-4, 70s. 70s are kicking ass. But don't underestimate the 90s. You know, they were kicking ass at the beginning. And they may come back and kick some fucking ass. But right now, the 70s are fucking killing it, because I knew it all along. Why the fuck was I even kidding myself? But next week could be a fucking wild card. Payday versus Pure Country. We're keeping up with the country theme. So, I mean, fuck, I'm excited. Like I said, anybody that, like, comments, complaints, you know where the comment section is. 7-4, 70s.